Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to ask that if you haven't found a seat, you find a seat, and if we need to bring more seats, we'll bring more seats. This way, we can go ahead and get started this afternoon. On behalf of Chad and Natalie and Madeline and Craig and Margot, I want to welcome each and every single one of you here. When I sat down and talked to Margot about all of this, she's like, I don't know. We probably won't even have 100 people here. There's more than 100 people in this room right now. I had 90 chairs set up, and we have since exceeded that. So we are certainly thankful that each and every single one of you are here. We are here today to swap stories. That's what we're here today. When Margot talked to me, she's like, Pastor, I don't want a funeral. Dad didn't want any fuss. And having visited Elmer 10, 12 times, yeah, I could hear him say, I don't want anything. Really crystal clearly. And so we're here to sit down and swap stories. Now, there are people who could not be here for one reason or another, but they wanted to still participate. So we are streaming this on our church's YouTube page so that way those people could be able to participate as well. So here in a little bit, you all will have an opportunity to share with everybody some of those stories. And when we do, I'm going to ask that you come up front, and you're going to have to come up and stand in front of a mic, and it's okay. It won't kill you. But we have to do it that way so that way the people who aren't with us but are with us can hear you. So I want to let you all know that. It was my pleasure Margot came to me about 8 months ago and said, hey, PJ, that's what Margot and her girls call me. Unless you're Natalie, then she calls me Yogi Bear. Long story. Hey, can you go visit my dad? I said, absolutely. So I ran down to Binghamton and met Elmer for the first time. I instantaneously knew where all of Margot's orneriness, stubbornness, and spunk came from. And it was a joy to get to know Elmer over the past 6, 7, 8 months. And what a joy it was to see him each time. And I said to Margot, do you mind if I say something? Because, you know, I got to enjoy Elmer. And he would tell me all sorts of stories. Newsflash to all of you who knew him a lot better than I did. And he told me this story about a bull, but now I'm finding out that he told everybody that story. And now I'm starting to second guess how much of that story was true. But I'll never forget, he went up to, every time I'd walk in, for the first 2 or 3 times, I had Margot with me. And Margot would be like, hey, this is the pastor. And he'd go, minister. I said, yeah, how you doing? How you doing, Elmer? And we'd have time, and I'd pray with him and different things. And he was in Norwich rehab all by himself, and I didn't have Margot going with me, but I told Margot I'd run up and see him. So I walk in, and I start talking with him, and he starts talking with me, and I can tell that he is sitting there thinking, who the heck are you? So I looked at him, and I said, Elmer, do you know who I am? He goes, nah. I said, Elmer, I'm Margot's pastor. Oh, yeah, you're the minister. And we had a wonderful conversation. I was able to pray with him. I was able to tell him that Jesus loved him enough to die for him. I had the conversation about the good news of Jesus with him, and it was great. We had this great, sweet moment, and I prayed with him again, and I get ready to leave, and he looked at me, and he said, now, minister, if you'd come around a few more times, I might remember your name next time. Hopefully he remembered my name all the way up to the end. But what a joy it was. And to see Elmer go from a man who was when I first met him, extremely hard-pressed and scared, to at the very end, him being full of peace, full of understanding, full of just being okay to just go. I only know of one person who can make that sort of difference in a person's life, and his name is Jesus. And it was so cool to watch Elmer interact not only with me, with his family, but for him to start to interact with Jesus. And that is so sweet and so special for me, for Margot, for the girls, and for all of us today. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to put this back in here. I got to go first. That way nobody else had to. I didn't want to put that amount of stress on Chad. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put this back in here. Chad's going to come up and he's going to share some stories about his dad.
You didn't tell me that.
Hey. I mean, I can BS it, but I don't think it's going to be as good as you. He's going to come up, and then we're going to have a song by Natalie. And then it'll be a time for you to come up and share some stories, and we will get to laugh together because Elmer was hilarious. We will get to cry together because we miss Elmer, and we will get to remember who he was. So, Chad, come on up. Do you want this out or in? Stand close, though, so that way people online can hear you.
Oh, that's right. Okay. First, welcome to the first annual Let's Roast Elmer open mic night. What the pastor said, yes, when we get done, would love people to come up here and trade stories. This is why we're here.
You're short.
I love you so very much. My sister.
Sorry.
This started 6 months ago with the first phone call I got from Margot. And it's been not a good trip over the past 6 months. Well, the only thing I'm going to say, Doug, you really can't hide like you used to.
Get closer to the mic.
Okay.
So you can't hear.
There were too many things that I wanted to say about Dad, and I had to write it down in a speech. I apologize because I will be reading from this. Dad loved telling stories, and he followed 2 strict rules.
First rule, never let facts get in the way of a good story. And second, don't use real names.
Thank you, Natalie. All of us have stories to share today, and I intend on listening to as many as I can. And it doesn't matter if I've already heard them, because I've not heard your guys' version yet. And I will tell you my stories of him, such as the evening of Drunk Santa, or the infamous coon hunting story.
I won't hit you, Chad. I won't hit you.
Yeah, but those are not to be shared here on stage, but later, in person. The first time I met Dad was when he strode into my hospital room with Mom. Without missing a beat, I turned to the nurse and said, "That's my daddy." A few months later, they were married, which means I am one of the very few people who can lay an honest claim to choosing my own father. As we all know, we learn our first life lessons from our parents, and I am no exception. I just touched on one, that family is defined by more than just blood. And Dad taught me family is as much who you choose as it is who you are related to. Another lesson occurred as Dad turned to me and said, "Don't tell your mother," as we wheeled the big truck into the parking lot of a bar. I sat up there at the bar like my 4-year-old self had every right to be there, chatting up with the other customers, and the bartender bought me lunch. I caged a quarter from the gentleman next to me for the jukebox and played John Denver's Country Roads and an Olivia Newton-John song, If You Love Me, Let Me Know. And still, to this day, I am reminded of that long-ago jukebox when one of those two songs come on the radio. As a young kid, Dad was Superman to me. And that image of super strong and confident and capable was hard to shake. Even many years later, after diabetes had ravaged his body and he suffered through 2 broken hips and malady after malady cropped up for their turn, when I closed my eyes, I still saw a Superman. He had a look that could cow a busload of children without saying a word or doing anything more than hitting the air brakes and looking in that big rectangular mirror.
Don't forget the broom. Don't forget the broom.
And those same kids who froze in fear at the first glance at that mirror also gushed all over Elmer when he would hand out candy and soda before Christmas and at the end of the school year. And I knew that horrible stare too well, more fearful of it than any other punishment, that look of simple disappointment. This man once picked up the front of a station wagon, but could never say no to a child. He thought Pretty Woman was a great movie, which, by the way, I finally saw for the very first time this weekend, but also loved Top Gun. The man grounded me from driving a tractor for a week after a minor transgression, but put my girlfriend on that same damn tractor to teach her how to drive, spending 15 minutes going over the basics and then just leaving her to her own panic-induced devices as she went around the field again and again and again. And I also have to mention his immense patience when it comes to animals. From a tiny deer mouse that eventually would sit next to him, Mom, you remember that? This little deer mouse, he's sitting in his green easy chair up at our house watching TV, and this little mouse would come out and sit next to him on a chair, and he finally actually coached it to get up there, sit on his lap, or sit on his toe. And then we had the German Shepherd with a broken leg literally dropped off on our doorstep, to a feral cat who domesticated itself because of him, to scores of other dogs and cats and horses. And I know all of you in here have seen him with an animal at one point in time or another. And as I said, I'm not up here to trade stories yet. Those stories are best later told one-on-one. Suffice to say that I don't think there was any child he did not like or did not like him. And he had that rare talent of making you simultaneously the butt of a joke and yet somehow in on it so that you could laugh at yourself, and that was okay. He was a farmer and loved his trade, born and bred to it. And it never occurred to me that this man had once been a little kid playing cowboys and Indians with his brothers and his cousins, who dreamed of being a country music star with the help of his guitar. Something that Margot and I just found a couple of days ago was this scholarship certificate. June 25th, 1954, from the Sickler Music Studio, this certifies that Elmer McGown has successfully completed the Oahu Elementary course on the plectrum guitar. Again, who he had dreamed of being a country music star with the help of his guitar, who dreamed of other grand adventures beyond the family or this small town. So I was floored when he told me that he had never wanted to be a farmer. I found this out during one of our talks not too long ago with him sitting in the easy chair, pretending to watch a football game, and I up from D.C. during one of my visits. I had thought he was a farmer through and through, born and bred to it, but no, he had never wanted to take over the farm. His first real dream was to be a physical education teacher. His favorite teacher, Mr. Tryon, some of us in here had him as well, did his due diligence as a mentor, explaining that Dad would need college and told him some of the required courses, and even suggested some schools relatively close. But Dad, he knew that college was out of reach. He was dirt poor, a man of the land, didn't think he was smart enough. There were just too many strikes against him. Rich people went to college, not people like Dad. So he took that dream and he locked it away in a tiny box behind a locked door and walked away as it slowly turned into a regret. And then, after joining the Army and spending most of his enlistment in Germany, he ran smack into his second real dream, and that was to re-enlist and make a career out of the military. By all accounts, he was good at his job, and the Army wanted him to stay. But family intervened by ways of letters and phone calls. He needed to come home, save the farm, or his mother was going to be homeless. So he took his second dream and put it in a box next to that first one, and watched that one turn into a regret as he returned home. 2 dreams, 2 regrets, 2 paths he could have taken. Instead, he bowed to familial obligation and settled into a life he did not want. He did find joy and contentment and made the best of his situation. In fact, my love of tractors comes from him and the hours and hours and hours and hours spent as a little kid sitting in that steel frame chair that he... Yep.
Been there.
Right on the fender. That thing was uncomfortable as all get out, but I fell asleep there. I also, the love, the joy of strolling through an open field or through acres of woods I get from him. The love of the land and nature in a perfect summer morning. Or a perfect winter evening watching the shooting stars. I lost my place. He saw his two children graduate from high school and college and begin their own families, and he found further satisfaction, if vicariously, through Margot and me. I speak now of those 2 regrets I mentioned earlier that he had locked away. The second one of making a career in the military, I was able to fulfill. The measure of pride he felt when I retired after 26 years in the Air Force, it was almost as if he had done it himself. And I was happy to share it with him, knowing the pride that he felt for me. And I know Dad was proud of me and that he loved me. And I had fulfilled one of his 2 biggest dreams, and in doing so, fulfilled many other small ones. Traveling the world, he loved listening to my adventures, relating to those military stories and connecting it to his time in the Army, traveling all over Europe. Through me, he was able to visit Spain and England as well, and the Middle East and Japan and a dozen other places. And Margot, I'm not going to ask you to stand up, says that's just too hard. While I was gallivanting around the country, moving from state to state, you showed him another joy. I can't look at you right now. One that was centered here in this town, and you also transformed one of his 2 biggest regrets back into a dream and then fulfilled it. And this is when the school board accepted you as their new physical education teacher. The very job that he had so desperately wanted and his first big, real dream. This is the tough part. We are the best of Dad. His potential realized if through 2 widely divergent paths. When people look at us, they should see the best of him. Just as people will see the best of us in our children. I love Dad with all of my heart, and it rips me to shreds that he is gone. He's my Superman. But he lives on in both of us, the best of him. And rest assured, little sister, I do see the best of Dad in you. Thank you all for bearing witness to this and to a message that needed to be delivered, sentiment that Dad could not do himself. I'm grateful to the man who married my mother and adopted me, who raised me and taught me so much. And his final lessons to me are as simple as they are sublime. It is never too late to mend bridges, and it's never too late to chase a dream. Thank you.
couple summers ago, scrolling through Facebook, as Grandpa did quite often, he found a music video of, I'm probably going to butcher this person's name, Claudia Lawyer, or something like that, singing One Day at a Time. And he couldn't find it again because, I mean, he was tech savvy for his age, but he could not find it. So as soon as Madeline and I were there, he's like, I saw this girl and she was singing this song and it was just so pretty. You gotta find it for me. So Madeline and I searched with the limited clues and the strange name that we can't even pronounce, so you can only imagine how it sounded from him. So we searched and searched and we found it. And he had this whiteboard with all the facts that had to be written down so he would remember. And we went over there and we wrote down that person's name so that way whenever he wanted to, he could listen to that song. So I'm going to sing that one for him. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. Ooh, I'm only human. I'm just a woman. Help me believe in what I can be in all that I am. Show me the stairway that I have to climb. Lord, for my sake, teach me to take one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I'm asking from you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. Lord, help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. Do you remember when you walked among men? Well, Jesus, you know, if you're looking below, it's worse now than then. Pushing and shouting, crowding my mind. So for my sake, teach me to take one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus. That's all I'm asking of you. To do every day what I have to do, Lord, to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. So for my sake, show me the way. One
Keep it. Anybody else have issues, you just holler. We'll do our best to solve them. So, is there somebody who, am I still getting pointing because somebody wants to talk? Or, I'm sensing that is a common thread, that most people here don't have just one favorite memory, but it's like, okay, out of the dump truckload that I have, what's it going to be? Okay. Hey, Natalie, can you help your lame sister there? I'm not saying that because I think she's subpar.
Finally, someone shorter than me.
Temporarily, yep.
So I don't even know how old I was. I was probably 4 or 5. And Grandpa had this calf that must have got abandoned by its mom. And it was living on their front porch. And they were bottle feeding it forever and ever. And whenever they tried to put it back into the pasture, it would show up on their front porch the next day. So one day at county fair, I was talking to Grandpa about it, and he was just complaining about how that calf is just showing up at their door and even's knocking the door trying to get inside. So I said, well, what if I buy it from you? And he's like, you don't have any money to buy it from me. And I said, I'll buy it to you. So I bought it. $1 I bought it from him. And the next day, we brought it over to our house. And it did the same thing it did there. It kept escaping, and it was just being so stubborn, that cow was. And I named it Buckwheat. And I still have that cow to this day, 14 years later. And whenever I look at her, I always get reminded of him and how we made the best bargain, and I bought it for $1. One of the last things I remember talking to Grandpa about is how when I joined him up there in heaven, and we're going to go to an auction just like we did all the time when I would happen to be sick, and it would be Wednesday, so we would go to the auction, and I would convince him to buy different things. One time we bought a rabbit for Natalie. Grandma didn't like that very much. Showed up with a rabbit to her house. And then we would always bring Shadow with us. We would stop at the restaurant that was at the auction, and we would get a hot dog, and I'd go back and I'd give Shadow the hot dog, or bologna sandwiches at home that Shadow would eat, and we have some back there to remember him.
Hopefully with butter on.
Yep, butter, yep. So Grandpa, I'll always remember him going to the auctions and buying that cow, and he always loved the animals, and haying. He hayed from the day that he, that's the last thing that he was talking about. He just loved baling hay, so.
Somebody else have a story they want to share? Exactly. Don't be shy. I know lots of stories will get passed, but if there's just one that's got to get told, now's the time.
I was Elmer's milk inspector. I first met Elmer in 1992. I had worked at McDowell & Walker's feed store here in Oxford for a couple of years. And when I first showed up there, I remember Elmer would stop in there a couple times a week, seems like, after his bus run. And about the third time he came across me there at the loading dock, he said, "What is a nice, young, strapping, smart, handsome guy like you doing here?" And with all sincerity, he began asking me questions, and I told him that I had just left my family farm, which was actually my dream. And so we built some commonality there. I think he felt bad that it was an interesting reversal. I didn't realize he didn't want to go back to the family farm. But through conversations, I shared with him that, that was my dream. So as time goes by, over the next year or so, he kept asking. He says, "Young man," he goes, "well, what have you got going on?" And I said, "Well, I'm got a few things I'm working on." And he kept pestering, and I didn't tell him, but I had about a year and a half in at the feed store. I have an ag degree. I needed a little more. I needed a little more education behind me, which I pursued, and took a state exam to become a milk inspector. And I remember the day that he was one of the farms on my first roster that I had. And when I showed up at the farm, he's like, "So, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well," "I'm your milk inspector." And he paused and looked at me, and he said, he says, "Folks from a small town, they can succeed and do big things." As I remember, he was one of the first people to congratulate me. So the funny part of the story, so a year goes by, I do my inspections every 4 months, and I showed up. It was probably winter time. Cows were stabled. Things weren't looking the best. So I talked to him, and I said, "I'm going to put you on a re-inspect." He's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, there's a few things here that need to be corrected, and I don't know whether it was rubber parts, something to do with milking equipment, and stable cleanliness and so forth." And so I filled out the inspection form, and then at the bottom right-hand corner, there's either pass, fail, or suspend. Well, I told him I'd be back in 2 weeks, but I put the 14-day re-inspect in the suspend box and circled it. Went off on my way. And I came back 14 days later, and he's there, and he's all. And I'm like, the place looked perfect. And I remember Sharon, she was there kind of quietly back in the corner. She's like, "See, don't ruffle his feathers. We got to get a passing score." And I had not realized that I wrote the 14-day re-inspect in the suspension box. And he says, "Well," he goes, "do I still have a market?" And I said, "Well, you betcha." I said, I had no intention of putting that in the suspension box. And it's all in the delivery, I'm sure. But it was a very humorous moment once we got it all figured out. And I guess the highlight of the whole thing was I'm pretty sure he was one of the first people to congratulate me and to express the people from a small town. Yeah. And the fact that I came from a farming background, there's a lot of ag people here, agricultural people, they have a unique bond. They stick together, they know things, the struggles, and the challenges that other folks don't realize. And yeah, ag folks have a unique bond. So that was my experience with Elmer.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to make their way up there? Go ahead, head on up. Or somebody bring them a mic, one or the other. We can do that. It ain't going to pop or bang or anything like that.
Hi. Elmer McGown was no doubt the best friend I ever had in my whole life. He's the best friend I ever had in my whole life.
If I hold it, some of you will talk.
give it a go. You ask a lot.
You can do it, man. You can do it. I'll help you with that. Come on.
This is our cousin, Douglas.
Richard's two children, his older brother.
Speaking of older brother, I don't know what went down, but they were boys. Brothers will be brothers. Somehow, a pitchfork got thrown through my father's thigh. That's all I know. Gained great respect for that. Sitting at Graham's table. If anybody,
Smoke everywhere.
well, little stove smoke too.
Okay.
Elmer had his spot. If you were lucky enough to sit beside him, you could see the shit-ass grin coming across his face. He'd stand up, pull his shirt out, drop his pants down, diabetic, sit down, and he's pulling his vial. All of a sudden, you get just a little enough to know that he's there. Stick you in the thigh. Biggest smile across his face. Like, all right. Shoveling calf shit. How many loads?
Too many.
Hours upon hours upon hours.
You have scars to prove it.
Another pitchfork.
Pitchfork from my grandmother. Totally unintentional. She about cried and passed out. Grabs my arm and puts a handkerchief out of her back pocket onto it. Oh, thanks for bringing that one up. It must have been, well, it was under 4 hours, because if over 4 hours and you don't get something sewed up, they can't sew it up. So I found out the hard way. Waited till we get done milking, because that's priority, you know. I wasn't bleeding to death. I wasn't passed out. I'm good. Just hold it up. It'll be all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Graham and I sat in, I think, the green pickup truck.
Yes.
Can't remember.
Push it, pop the clutch.
Oh, yeah. Battery's dead. You got to just park it on the knoll and push it, get it started. Well, that was just the beginning of my evening. Go to Graham's house. She's nervous. She's getting money out and this and that. I was like, we don't need money. Just take Graham's station wagon, I believe. And then on the way to Sydney, stopped at your guys' house, Elmer's house, got a different vehicle, because that had a little more gas into it. That might make it to Sydney. Freaking train.
Yeah.
Of all the nights.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, got my arm up, you know, behind everybody else. We're sitting there watching the train go by. So, longer story short. Get to the hospital, and we're all farmer's tans, you know, everything. That nurse is just scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing. He finally looked at it, nurse, and says, ma'am, if you scrub him one more time, he's going to deck you. Because that's tan, that's not dirt. I was very happy he said that. Which one? Which? Actually, wasn't that the Yamaha that nobody could stay on? Carol got bucked up. Hers was a Honda. So, Aunt Carol, as far as I know the story, she bought it. It sat and whatnot. She'd crashed, wrecked. Bike was possessed. I still think it is. Maybe still haunting me. I don't know. Dad got it. Sat in the barn. Wouldn't turn over. Pour a little oil into it. Work onto it. Got it running. First drive, I'm out there. I got feet down. There's snow on the ground. I'm so excited to ride this bike. No, I rode it all right. I wasn't 16, not legal. I don't know how many miles of state land we rode, but anyways. Knew all the neighbors. It's like
Very true.
ain't a hack if it works. So, I think we had supper at Graham's, as we always did. I said, I'll go for a quick run. Well, it's getting dusk out. It was a quick run, all right. I was slowing down. The last thing I remember is I was doing like 40. Next thing I know, there's a deer in the front forks. Flip, 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 flip. I was mad. Bike wouldn't move. Shut the key off, shut the gas off, because, safety. Kicked the deer on the way back. By the way, she had 2 little ones inside of her, so she was no small one. Walked Aunt Carol's, Perry and Carol's trailer. She screams, and I'm like, what? Because I couldn't see myself. I had teeth knocked out, scars, scuffed, hole in the knee. Oh, yeah. So I thought Carol brought me to my house, and she was in the tub. She comes out. She got dried out, put clothes on.
All I know is
And
my favorite part of our family stories is they're all different depending on who tells the story. And we all were there.
True. Can't deny. But I don't remember Elmer taking me.
Oh, we came out of the barn and we could hear your father yelling at the top of his lungs, and I just looked at Dad and went, uh-oh.
See, the thing, my dad didn't like hospitals. Because the biggest thing he remembered is his dad went to the hospital, never came home. MS.
And he goes, that boy's going to the hospital. I
One-
don't care what I have to do.
An earlier memory had a Speed X riding lawnmower. Gear shift in the middle, battery right there by the boys. I plowed the little pond up above so we could raise Mary Hell onto it, right off from the trees down into the pond. Used to ice skate. My God, my dad could ice skate. Anyways, I digress. Used to drive it up to, I could see my Graham's house. She was the pinnacle of family. Used to drive it up there. No big deal. One day the regulator stuck, overcharged. Battery acid. Blew up. And it's one of those things you can see it coming, but you can't react. Kind of like the Matrix, except I failed. No, I didn't fail. I remembered anyways, battery blows up, got acid in my eyes, and then thank goodness I'm like a couple 100 yards from my house. Go back to my house, get into the sink, hold your eyes open, flush them out. As soon as I did that for several minutes, and thank God I did. Called the only person I knew that was around or up, because my dad worked second shift. I don't know where Mom was, but anyways, maybe it was.
Working.
So Elmer took him to the hospital. He goes, close your eyes, close your eyes. I'm reading road signs. He's like, damn it, boy, shut your eyes. So, but 20/20 vision, I'm good.
I got one. This one's for Chad.
Oh, I was just getting warmed up about Chad.
Every day before Elmer would leave to drive the school bus, he would send Chad to get the cows. And there came a time when we were old enough where the horses weren't good enough, we wanted to do motorcycles. So Chad says, I'll do it, I'll go with the motorcycle.
Yeah, but he had the good dirt tire on the back of the Honda.
It was a dirt bike, I'll give him that.
Enduro.
He did not have the common sense enough at the time to avoid the swamp.
The cow made it through.
The motorcycle was up to the seat, sitting there in the swamp. Chad gets off with his head down. He knows he's got to go tell Dad because it's time to get the bus and go to school. I'm at my house, and I can hear Dad, your dad, coming down with the poppin' John Deere all the way, cussing you out beyond belief. I mean, words I hadn't quite heard yet. I'd heard some. Got it out. We made it to school on time, and that motorcycle worked after that, too. But I'll never forget your dad that day. I mean, words, he should have been a sailor. Big one. I'll never forget it.
Come on, you got one more.
Back to what Douglas said at the very beginning, we need to make a slight correction. Yes, my dad did throw a pitchfork at his brother, his father, and this is when they were, young kids. But the reason he did it is because Richard would not play dead when they played Cowboys and Indians. So when they went back up into Haymow next time, he made darn sure that Richard played dead.
If nobody else wants to share anything, we're not going to belabor this, but I'm not going to cut you off either. Okay, then Margot's turn.
Where to start? Like Tam said, there's countless stories, but how do you even start with a person that taught you almost everything you know? Instilled this belief in me that women could do anything, absolutely anything a man could do. And I did everything right by his side too, because when Chad left for college and joined the military, I was his right hand man, woman, a little bit of both. I'm a woman, trust me, I've got that clear. Yep. Craig wave, I am married, 2 children, I'm good. But yeah, he gave me a unfailing love of animals. If it wasn't for my husband, I probably would take every animal in like he did. My children shake their head because I have their animals still, because they're not going anywhere. They're mine now. I take ownership. And this desire to want to help anybody that has a need, even if you don't like them. He didn't care. And just a few of the little things that I got to do, probably younger than I should have. I had my own they talk about their motorcycles. I had my own little mini bike, little Honda 50 that would do 50 at 4. And I tried going after cows too, and my stories are not as good as his. I broke the kickstand off. I did get wedged under the tractor one time with him, and I heard some colorful things too. Oh yeah, you missed some of these stories. Yeah, I was afraid somebody was coming out of Graham's driveway. I did a U-E smash, and all I hear is, "You stupid!" Don't say those words. And he's carrying me because my head was wedged underneath the tire. My shin hit the drawbar, and there's blood everywhere. Didn't go to the hospital. It wasn't that bad. Driving tractors, as soon as you could hold the steering wheel and stand up to push, you didn't need to sit to push. As long as you could stand and hold, you're good. Brakes are optional. I learned that at a very young age. Going down the hill towards their house, I'm going to pull you. Just pull the clutch when I wave. Why? Because you don't have brakes and you're going to start it. When you start it, you'll be able to control your speed. If it doesn't start, just crash into the back of me. You don't say no. Okay, I just remember being terrified. It started. Yes, thank you. Raking hay, yep, that was the first honorable job. If you got to rake hay, you were important, you were promoted, except he would never tell you how to get out of the middle at the end. He'd wait to see if you could figure it out. If you had passed raking hay, you got to bale hay. There's an honor. But he forgot to tell you, now you have to back up, hook up, pick up stray bales. It wasn't that great of an honor, really. Mowing hay, yeah, I didn't want that one. I figured there's got to be some trick after the raking and the baling. I'm like, nope, you're good. You can do that. You can chop. I like unloading. Unloading's good for this one. Yeah, I was good with that. Same way with milking. I knew there was a trick there. You get swatted, you get dirty, you get kicked. Now I'll feed and clean. I'm good with shoveling. I don't need to do the other. And the last one, probably some of my favorite ones, were driving vehicles. Driving a standard 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, a little Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, let's say I learned all the mistakes you learned then. I ripped the bumper off the front of the Volkswagen because I turned the wheel too tight. And all he said is, they make 2x4s every day. We'll put a new one on. That was great. How to back a hay wagon up. How to back a horse trailer up. And anytime, I got to share this one for Deb. All those days of, because Marion and my dad were buddies. Judy and my dad were buddies. Roger and my dad were buddies. They were all like this. And thanks to them being so close, we get to be close with our kids with them. And they aren't cousins to me. They're my second moms and dads. They're the people I run to when I'm having a bad day. And I'm just so grateful that he taught us that love for family. But he would ever so calmly, it didn't matter who it was, could walk up to you. You got this. And that instant trust, belief, confidence, that just a look on his face and the quiet, calm words, you got this, keep back, turn this way, look that way. Every time I do anything with equipment or my truck and trailers, I can just hear his nice, quiet voice giving me the strength to do it. Even right now, as that you see that one, I see it back there, I can hear him telling me, good job. Lucky, because I'm lucky to be alive. Yep, because I wasn't supposed to live. I was a tiny little thing, and he always said, well, your mother named you Margot, but we should have called you Lucky, because you're damn lucky to be alive, kid. So that's what he called me the rest of my days. Yeah, that. So I was accident prone, right there with Douglas. I was his right-hand man from as high as I wanted to prove to Dad I could do anything. He said I could do it, I'm going to prove I can do it. Left-handed, right-handed, I don't care. If he said I could do it, I was going to try. Pounding fence posts before I could reach the top of the fence post. Yeah, you stand on the bucket in the tractor. It works. I couldn't pick the thing up, but if you swing it enough times, you won't hit the fence and ruin it. But we were building a new fence, and it was dark. And he says, Lucky, give me the hammer. I go running and right into the scar that I still have all the way across my thigh at 9 years old. Disappeared, and it comes out brand new, thank goodness, brand new. And Chad takes me home, and he's pouring the antibiotic, because our family by now, we did not go to the hospital right away. Chores had to be done, cows need to be milked. Then, if you're bleeding bad enough, maybe. And if we had enough gas in the car. So he's squishing the antibiotic, and all I remember is Chad freaking out every time he'd do that, because it would just disappear. And I hear them out in the kitchen. I think she needs to go, Dad. She's really got to go, Dad. When I put it in there, it just disappears. And I was like, what disappears? This is cool. So consequently, I have this large, because if you don't go soon enough, they can't stitch. So they just use tape. So I have a nice wide scar across my thigh from that. But he taught anybody that was close to him a pure dedication to what you loved. And yes, I knew. Why do you think I am who I am? Because he said, don't you dare take that farm over. You need to go get your degree. And I said, just a minute, please. This is my time. This is my time. He wanted that phys ed, and he really didn't think he was good enough or smart enough. Didn't have the right name, didn't have the right family to be able to go after it. So he gave up everything, literally, for me to go to college. He lost the farm for me to go to college. He gave up everything so I could live out his first dream. and that love for kids. I'm okay. It's okay to cry. He heard me cry a lot. That digging change out of his grungy, dirty pocket full of hayseed for a kid that forgot their lunch money, which some of you in the room, he did that for. Making a cake were the Franks, because I know that one little girl came on the bus crying one morning. Dad won't make a cake for its mom's birthday. Went home, asked Graham to make a birthday cake, brought a birthday cake, and we all got off the bus and sang happy birthday to that mom. And you all know the stories. He stayed up all night when my first horse passed away, came over to my house, and she was colicking, and he sat in his truck with his headlights on so I could do lap. He'd beep the horn, time for a break. We'd sit in his truck and have a break, and then he'd go, all right, girl, go walk her again. All night we did that. Sat with me through that whole thing. He spoiled two little girls, Pumpkin and Peanut. They were, you want to talk about pride? He was mad as a hornet when I told him I was pregnant. Mad as a hornet. You know what that's going to do? You know how much work that is? Yes, I know. But it's time, Dad. We have to share. And Grandpa was there if we needed an extra trailer. I scrolled through some of his posts and some of his favorite ones. I got to be photographer today because Madeline showed Jeb and Natalie showed her new horse and my girl showed her new horse. I get to be the photographer. Now this one you guys will remember, Empire Farm Days. The only vacation we had growing up, it was one day to a farm thing. We'd pile in the back of the pickup truck, and smart aleck Dad would take the corners a little quick, because if he heard the kids mouthing in the back, and it was open pickup, just a cap, we'd roll to one side and roll to the next side, and Graham would make egg salad sandwiches. Took me years before I could ever eat that again. And then I got to share something special with him when Natalie was born. He always said he wanted to go to the Walton Fair. Loved the Walton Fair. So every year until he got too ill to do it, we took him to the Walton Fair. And Natalie, Madeline, do you remember the day that it torrentially rained? And we hid in the horse stall with Bubba because it was raining so hard it was coming in, and the horse stood there and got wet so that we could stay dry. Who would do that with an old man and a cane and two little kids dressed up? Only Bubba. In college, he didn't come to a lot of my high school games. He just couldn't. But thanks to my husband, he drove my parents to my college games, and it was just something to hear his voice. I hadn't heard that before growing up, telling me, you got this, way to go. That was precious to me. When I needed a hug, if I was 2, right up to Sunday, my dad always gave me a hug. All of you always, I know last year during our basketball run, everyone said, oh, Margot gives you bear hugs. That's from my dad. He would bear hug you, and if you got a hug, you're part of the family. That means he loves you. Even though the last 6 months were a huge struggle for him, it was when him and I got to grow close again. Because families, we have our ups and downs. If you crossed him, you knew it too. And let me tell you, he could hold a grudge. He could hold a grudge, and I hope that's one lesson I don't take from him, because this past 6 months has taught me a lot. You gotta let go of the petty stuff, because it really is petty. It's dumb. Let it go, because look what we're doing today. Shedding tears that he's not in pain, but I think of the days that I lost that I should have been by his side. We both were able to forgive each other for past words that we shouldn't have said to each other. And the greatest honor I will ever have with him was I got to hold his hand hug him and hold him close and whisper, because he told me a week before he passed, I'm good. Sorry. Babe, Lucky, I'm going to love you to the very end and more. And I want you by my side to the very end. And if it's one thing that I will treasure, even though it was the hardest thing to do, is to be able to sit there and hold them and talk to them and tell them how much you love them. And he couldn't talk back, but to have him squeeze your hand and just know that they love you forever and that he got to meet Jesus face to face. And it was beautiful. I can only imagine what that was like for him to be whole. No more diabetes, that wretched disease. He can see, he can run, he can dance. He was a dancer. Without Douglas having to come help. But there's so many people that had touched our lives and his. Tammy, I can't thank you enough for being another right-hand man, for giving up hours to be with him, to help when I couldn't be there, when it was too hard to be there. You were a daughter to him too. You were. And I thank you. Bill, where are you? You were his precious friend, and keeping him trucking going so that he had something to look forward to every Wednesday. Did Bill take the truck? Yes, he did, Dad. Yes, he did. The phone calls you did, the friendship your family gave him, and my mom, you brought them a light that after cows, life still is good. Brandy, where's my little sweetheart? You did so much nursing for him. He thought the world of you, my girl. I know, it's okay. Mark and Danelle went over and helped so many times. You just gave up selfishly. Jack, oh, I don't even want to begin to think of the stories you two would tell. You were two peas in a pod, you know. It was very precious. The Castles, oh my gosh, I remember the time he brought me over to ride popcorn home because she would not stay at our farm. You guys were great, always there. You talk about family. The whole neighborhood, when we say neighbors in the country, it's a 5-mile radius. People in the city don't get that. Debbie, Brian, thank you. I know we shared lots and lots of stuff, but just the willingness to just drop stuff and go when he needed a hand, I can't thank you enough for that. My dear Judy, my Aunt Judy, my Mama Judy, you listened to me more times, and the one picture I'll cherish is when I kidnapped him out of the rehab center this year. Said, come on, old man, we're going for a ride. It was his last day of freedom, really. I took him to Judy's house, and we sat for an hour. I only told him I was taking him for a 10-minute ride. Took him to my house and brought every single animal to the car, and he got to love on all the horses and donkeys. Roger, you were his coon hunting buddy, his hunting buddy, and when he couldn't hold a gun to help teach me how to hunt, you were there, and that meant the world to him. Pastor in our church, thank you for this, because there's no better way for my dad to be honored than to share and have everybody be able to gather and love on him. The Vets Home staff, they were amazing. He loved it there. They spoiled him. Lourdes Hospital was beyond unbelievable. My brother, he had a strange way at first of showing his love, but he was beyond proud. you gave him a safe place to live the last years of his life. And I will be grateful for that. My girls, you put sparkle and light in his eyes. And when he got to hear you sing, Natalie, on Sunday, he lit up. It was that a girl. He just whispered, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm proud, I'm wonderful. And when you were there with him, he was so excited to know that you two are chasing your dreams. Please don't ever stop. And my husband, who's put up with a lot of me not being around the last 6 months, a lot of me not talking, a lot of me not knowing what to say, a lot of, thank you. Thank you for being my rock, my steady place, and my safe harbor. And this doesn't end our sharing. Share with each other, share with us. But in his words, daylight's burning and the supper's getting cold. Thank you.
Okay, this is how this is gonna work. I'm going to give thanks for this food, and then I'm going to ask Margot and Chad and all of their peeps whether they want to eat or not, to at least go through the line first. And let me pray for you all right now. Dear Jesus, I thank you so much for this family. Lord, I thank you so much for Elmer and the fact that he touched so many people. Whether it was kicking a cow, driving a school bus, or just being ornery. Lord, he was able to influence so many individuals. Lord, I thank you for this food. Lord, and I thank you for the stories that are going to be told. Jesus, I ask that we might be thankful today. Thankful not just for the sustenance, but thankful for our friend. In Jesus' name, amen. So Margot, Chad, and this crew at this table get to go first, and that table then after that, you two come on up. And then in order to keep the line at a somewhat better level because of space, I'll be through and say, all right, you guys can go get in line, okay?